this is our little bag project, and I just wanted to start you off by getting the zip in. So I just wanted to show you the whole panel first of all, and just give you a quick indication of how it goes together. Oh. So when it is finished, it will go with these bits together with a zip, and then that will fold along there, that will fold up, and the whole thing will close up. But to construct it, I've started by taking one of my pieces and just adding some batting to the back of it. Now I've stitched all the way around the edge and around that base piece as well to give me a nice sharp crease. And I've got a lining piece which is exactly the same. It's exactly the same shape. It just doesn't need a piece of batting on it. So we're going to start by putting the zip in. We're going to add the zip first to this project, and in this one we've actually got an invisible zip. So the difference between an invisible zip and a regular zip is regular zip, teeth and the pull will be visible on the front. With an invisible zip, you won't see the teeth on the front, but the pull will be there. So you can obviously get the zip open. So you have a zip that's, I think this one's about 40 centimetres. It's actually good kind of inch or two bigger either side than what you need along this edge. But we're going to put it together so that you can't see it. So what we're going to do is pop that there, and that's the outer piece face up, the zip face down, and then what would be the backing piece face down as well. And then we'll attach that along the top there so that when we flip that round and flip that round, all we'll be able to see is that kind of zip tape, and this will become our lining. So I'll go ahead and stitch this one on first, and then I'll come back to you and show you that we're going to do exactly the same for the other side. So I'm back from the sewing machine. I've just put that first row of stitching in there. It's important, which I didn't mention before, to line everything up before you start. So you've got to make sure that all these edges are absolutely spot on before you start, because last thing you want is one bit being off and then it's going to throw things out later. So we're going to put the other side of the zip in exactly the same way, but the easiest way to do it is to just flip the whole thing over so it looks the same as it did the first time and start all over again. So we're going to now put the zip in place, and at this point you actually want to make sure it's lined up with the bits on the other side, because you want everything to be lined up really well, because otherwise if you're a couple of millimeters out, maybe half a centimeter out at this point, it's going to make it more difficult later on. So get all of those lined up, and then your lining as well, get all of that pinned in place, all of those layers, and then stitch that side on as well. But as I said, remember, make sure everything is lined up so you get a nice neat finish. So I'll go ahead, pin this, stitch it, and then see you in a second. So I'm back from the sewing machine, stitched that second one on. Now, because this is a concealed zip, I would definitely recommend using either a zipper foot or a concealed zipper foot, or even like a cording foot or something, or a welting foot, because that's going to have a channel in the foot, which means it will stay much flatter when you sew this line across here. And what you should end up with at this stage is essentially kind of two pieces like that attached at the top either side by a zip. And what I'm going to do is just put it the right way round for you so you can kind of understand how it should be. So this obviously should be the outside. You can see the zip in place there, and then you've got that other part as your inside. Let's pop that in place as well. There you go. So that's kind of where we are at the minute. And the next step is actually to start attaching these end pieces to, let me just flatten that back out, the end pieces here. So we're going to close up that zip. So we're going to attach this end to this end, and we're going to do it as two separate pieces. So we're going to attach the internal first, then attach the external. So I'm going to unzip this, because at this point having the zip open is going to make, as you can see, it gives us much more movement, makes it much easier to work. And obviously you need to kind of close it, and whenever you stitch onto here, you need to make sure that the zip is within the inside before you stitch this on, because otherwise your zip is going to be stuck outside of where you need it to be. So I'm going to just manipulate this, get it pinned, and then come back and show you how we're going to stitch it. So I've just folded the bag out a slightly different way, just hopefully to show this as clearly as I possibly can. So this bag looks like a complex shape, but it only actually is kind of 3 stitches. Where we've just put the zip in, that's your step 1. Step 2 is attaching these 2 ends together, and then step 3 is sewing those sides up there once you've attached that end. So we're on step 2 now, which is putting these ends in. So if I just tilt that over and pop it flat, you can see this one is going to go onto here. Now, we've been a little bit generous with these pieces, and that's mainly because sometimes people leave quite big seam allowances, or people are a little bit further away on the zip tape, so it can be that sometimes you need a little bit more. So we've left you more. You can always trim that off if you find that you don't need it. So the first step is to just fold that in half and just give it a little crease, so I've got a centre line just there. I'm going to line that up with the centre of my zip, and then just pin these into position. So one in there, and then just get it nice and straight, one in that end, and then the same on the other side. I'm just going to fold that lining out of the way for the minute. So that's that one in place. What I'm going to do is sew straight across the top of there, but at this point I don't want to catch the lining, so I haven't gone and doubled back on any of these edges, just so I can just pick a couple of stitches out just to make sure that I can get straight across there without catching any of those. So I'm going to do that. And last thing I need to make sure of is that my zipper, my actual pull, is within my project, not sitting on the outside, because obviously once I've stitched across there, if my zipper pull's sticking out here, I'm not going to be able to get that bag opened. So I'm going to leave that as it is a minute, and then I'm going to repeat the process for this other end. So my ends are sewn now. I'm just going to make sure that all my pins are out. I was a bit naughty with sewing over pins, but they're all out now. I'm just checking. Yep. So now it's dealing with these lining pieces. The principle is exactly the same, but before we want to sew the lining pieces, now we've sewn across and secured those zips, we can actually take away that excess, which is going to make life a little bit easier when we come to sewing these pieces on. So exactly the same principle applies. You take that end panel, you fold it in half and just give it a little squeezed just to make a little press line in the centre. That centre line should line up with the zip, and then you're going to come either side with your lining panel, and this you are going to sew from not this side that we can see. We're actually going to flip it over a little bit and sew on the other side so we can see where we actually need to meet up with the other half that we've already sewn. So I'll pin these in place, I'll stitch these in place, I'll come back and show you, and then we can get on to the final stage, which is sewing up the sides. I just wanted to quickly show you this while I had it on the machine, because essentially, as I've said, the bag is made up of kind of stitching 3 straight lines. Yes, you might have to do them a couple of times to do either side, but it's the same 3 sections you're stitching. So this is section 2, which is that bag lining, and it's adjoining where the zip is to the inside of the bag. So what we're going to try and show you on here is the first one, dead easy to stitch, because you're stitching those 2 lining bits, you're stitching the 2 outer bits, the lining's not involved yet, and you're essentially going straight across, dead easy. But when you come to the lining, where that is attached to the zip as well as the bit that you've just sewn, that bit is a little bit more tricky. So what I do advise is, if you have a machine that will allow you to do so, because obviously this one here you can see, probably just see that needle stepping across. at the top of the screen there. So that steps back and forth. If you can get your needle stepped all the way across, or maybe you can use a zipper foot, which kind of is going to give you a little bit more gap between where your needle is and not have so much of a bulky foot on this side, that will really help you out. And then it's just a case of taking it nice and slow and just keeping an eye on those pins. If you are going to sew across your pins, I don't recommend it, but if you are going to sew across your pins, then just hand turn it as you go to make sure you're not going to cause any damage, and just trying to hold all of that top piece out of the way. Take your time, and if you get stuck on anything, just hand turn it so you can get it moving forward, and just take your time, because it will go. It'll just be little bits and pieces getting stuck under the foot that's causing things to kind of, you know, slow down a little bit. So I'm just going to move that across a touch. And as I said earlier, people ask me about this little gap all the time. It isn't in fact a little gap, because once you actually have everything sealed up, there are no raw edges showing, so you don't have to worry about that gap at all. I'm just going to take this final pin out and then complete this right to the end. So as you can see, you can do it with a normal foot. Ideally, if you can move your needle, that's brilliant. If you can't, then perhaps try a zipper foot. So we are nearly there. I have 3 of my 4 linings stitched, and obviously we've left one so we can turn it right side out. I have done 2 of my sides. You can see I've cut that excess off of there. Now that excess, remember, we just left on so that if you had any problems with adding a zip, you had that little bit of extra wiggle room. So we can now trim that excess off. But I forgot to mention that we have left 2 sides open on here. And that is because, just whip that pin out, we added to the Fabazine panel, because we had a little bit of extra space, a bonus handle for you. So the handle obviously is going to go on the outside of the bag when it's done, so you've got something to hold it and pick it up with. But if you actually want to add it at this stage, then all you do is you slip it through, and this is one of the ends of the bags, slip it through there. Now if you want it dead tight to the bag, pull it dead tight through. If you want to leave it so you've got a little bit more of a loop, just push a little bit more of it into the centre there, so you've got a little bit more of a baggier handle, a bit more to grip onto. Then line it up straight with the top of that hem that you're going to join onto there, and just when you pull that side straight to sew it, just trap it in, and by sewing straight along the top there, you're actually going to grip that handle in place as you sew. So I will pin that in place, sew these last 2 sides, and then we can turn everything right side out and see the finished bag. The last one I've got to do is to just trim the excess off of this one. I'm going to trim the excess from that handle at the same time. And then using the side that we've left open on the lining, we're going to pull it all through to the right side. Remember, we left that zip open, which should make our lives a lot easier. I didn't leave it that open, did I? Let me just undo that. Hang on. Where's my zipper? There it is. So yeah, we should have left that zip a little bit more open to make life a little easier, but we can open it now for all right. So everything through the right way around. And the more you leave the zip open, the easier this bit will be. But it's all good, we're there. So, and then the lining onto the inside. So there you can see, that's our little handle that we've added onto that side. And I'm just going to spend a minute or 2 just popping this all kind of back into position. And then there you can see you've got your little bag, little shaped bag, and we've also got that beautiful matching coordinating lining in there. Now the last job you've got to do is just seal up that gap where we turned it right side out. So what I would advise for that is just taking it over to the ironing board, pressing those edges inwards, and then just putting a little top stitch seam along there to seal everything off, and then give it a nice little press, and then you've got your really cute little shaped bag. Now you can, if you want to, add some extra embellishments to this, and you can also top stitch the seam on that zip if you want to, but I think you'll find it's a very, very cute little shape.